Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to me and my fellow friends. We are from group HIBISCUS and today we will explain to you about the chapter 3, Classical Theories of Economic Growth and Development. My name is Nofara Imeti Abu Qasim. My metric number is 263094. First of all, I will explain about the classical theories. Based on the classic post-World War II, it is about economic development and they have four major of thought. First, linear stage of growth model. Second, theories and pattern of structure change. Third, international dependence revolution. Fourth, neoclassical free market counter-revolution. In recent years, an eclectic approach has emerged that draws on all of the classic theories. The first approach is linear stage of growth model. Theories of the 1950 and 1960 view the process of development as a series of successive stages of economic growth through which all countries must pass. The theory of development consists of right quantity and mixture of saving, invest and foreign aid. It is necessary, especially to developing countries, and it has been followed by more developed countries. This is synonymous with rapid aggregate economic growth. After that, the linear stage has been released in 1970 by two competing schools, which is Theories and Pattern of Structural Change and International Dependence Revolution. Okay, let's focus on Theories and Pattern of Structure Change first. This theory uses modern economic theories and statistical analysis in an attempt to portray the internal process of structural change that a typical developing country must undergo if it is to succeed in generating and sustain rapid economic growth. Secondly, international dependence revolution. It was more radical and more political. It viewed underdevelopment, for example, international and domestic power relationship, institutional and structural economic regrets, and the resulting proliferation of dual economics and dual society both within and among the nation of the world. And this theory emphasizes external and internal institutions and political constraints on economic development. And it also emphasizes for new policies to eradicate poverty, provide more diverse employment opportunities, and to reduce income inequalities. And the fourth approach is neoclassical, and it also known as neoliberal free market counter-revolution. This theory revealed on 1980 and 1990. This thought emphasized the beneficial role of free markets, open economic, and the privatization of inefficient public enterprise. The failure of the theory is not to expound by dependence theories, but it caused by too much government intervention and regulation the economics. Thank you.
Good day everyone, my name is Wei and my metric number is 278945. Today I will be going to present the Rothschild state of growth. Rothschild state of growth is a theory of economic development associated with the American economic historian W. Rothschild, according to which a country passes through sequential steps in achieving development. There are 5 steps in Rothschild state of growth, such as traditional society, pre-condition to take off, threat to the maturity, and edge of high mass consumption. The first stage is the traditional society. Traditional society is going to be based on mainly new subsistence farming agriculture and have little surplus output to sell. There is a limited ability for growth due to the lack of modern technology. In this stage, here people heavily depend on manual labor and self-sufficiently. There are also no centralization or political system, and the trend is also done locally. According to Rothschild, this is where society generally begins before progressing toward the next stage of growth. The second stage is the preconditions to take off. It is generally described as prerequisites for rapid economic growth. It is the intermediary step between a traditional equivalent society and industrial explosion. It primarily involves external investment and a much greater exploitation of natural resources. In this stage, Agriculture became commercialized and mechanized due to technological improvements. Here individual social mobility begins and the development of national identity and shared economic interests. The next stage of Lotto stage of growth is the takeoff. In the stage of takeoff, productive investment rise from 5% to 10% of national incomes. This is because substantial manufacturing sector become developed. So there is a high rate of growth. In this stage, urbanization increases and the technological breakthroughs occur. For example of take-off figures are great brilliance industrial revolution and the agricultural revolution. It also moved up with modern social and political system. The next stage is the drive to maturity. It primarily involves the development of a large commercial economy, something similar to consumer capitalism. It also generally involves favorable integration into the global economy. In this stage, the economy and modern technology are steadily growing. However, agricultural workers decrease sharply because workers acquire greater skill and are paid higher wage in the secondary sector. The last stage or Lotto stage of growth is the age of high mass consumption. It is characterized by widespread consumerism and mass consumption. In this stage, high-value goods become normalized to purchase, and their cost consumers have beyond their basic need. Besides, here people also live in city, creating an urban society. Thus, society can focus on military, security issue, equality, and welfare issue. It also generally increases service sector activity in the age of high mass consumption stage. So that is my part presentation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nurul Farhan Adida binti Muhammad Asri. My matric number is 269987. So I present about the Harold growth model. So what is the Harold growth model? It is a Keynesian model of economic growth. It also used in development economies to explain an economic's growth rate in terms of the level of saving and of capital. It suggests that there is no natural reason for an economy to have balanced growth. According to Harold model, there are three kinds of growth. First is warranted growth, actual growth, and natural rate growth. Warranted growth is the rate of growth at which the economy does not expand indefinitely or go into recession. Actual growth is the real rate increase in a country's GDP per year. Natural growth is the growth an economy requires to maintain full employment. Next, Harold model theories. If we increase the saving, we increase our investment, and then capital stock will be higher and will be affected economic growth that will also higher. The main assumptions of the Harold models are as follows. First, a full employment level of income already exists. There is no government interference in the functioning of the economy. The model is based on the assumption of closed economy. In other words, government restrictions on trade and the complications caused by international trade are ruled out. There are no lags in adjustment of variables. For example, the economics variables such as saving, investment, income, expenditure adjust themselves completely within the same period of time. Moreover, the APS and MPS are equal to each other, or written in the symbol as our Y or change in S or change in Y. And then income, investment, savings are all defined in the net sense. They are considered over and above the depreciation. Next, for simple model of economic growth, net saving as V equal to SY. For investment, will be I equal to change in K. Because the total capital stock K bears a direct relationship of total national income or output Y, it will be K over Y equal to C, or change in K equal to C change in Y. And for national saving, S equal to net investment, S equal to I. So from the equation S equal to Sy and I may be I equal to change in K equal to C change in Y. Saving equal investment shown as S equal to Sy, C equal to change in Y equal to change in K equal to I. Then we obtain the following expression: change in Y over Y equal to S over C. To grow, economies must save and invest a certain proportion of their GDP. The higher they save and invest, the faster they can grow. In addition to investment, two other components of economic growth are labor force growth and technology process. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tanusha, matric number 270467. So now I'm going to explain about the obstacle and constraint of Herod-Dormer growth model. The first obstacle is the domestic saving gap. The most fundamental strategies of economic growth is simply to increase the proportion of national income saved S. So for example, what happens to the GDP growth when the national net saving is increased? So first of all, when the national net saving is at 6%, the GDP is 2%. And when the national net saving increase from 6% to 15%, the GDP growth also increase from 2% to 5%. So increasing the saving ratio in lower income country is not it's not that easy. Many countries suffer from a persistent domestic saving gap. This happens because many developing countries have low marginal propensity to save. So extra income gained is often spent on increased consumption rather than save. The second obstacle is weaknesses in human capital. Capital constraint stages approach to growth and development became a rational and an opportunistic tool for justifying massive transfer of capital and technical assistance from the developed to a less developed nation. The accumulation of capital will increase if the economy starts growing dynamically. A rise in capital spending is not necessarily a precondition for economic growth and also development. Why? Because country gets richer, which cause income and also saving to rise. So when the income gets higher, it will fuel the demand to rise, which prompts rise in capital. So the third obstacle is when a low level of new capital formation. So let's say if a country wanted to grow at a rate of 7% per year and it could not generate saving and investment at a rate of 21% of national income but could only manage to save 15%, then what the country will do? Because it has to reach the 21%, so the country have to seek to fill saving gap through either foreign aid or private foreign investment. Necessary versus sufficient condition of Herod-Dormer growth model. The Herod-Dormer growth model has a range of problems as it tends to focus only on economic growth. The mechanism of development in the theory of stages of growth did not always work. Why? Because economic growth and also economic development is not the same. Economic growth is actually necessary but not a sufficient condition to the development. At the same time, saving and investment is a necessary condition but not because it is a sufficient condition for development. On a practical level, it is really difficult to stimulate the level of domestic saving, particularly in the case of um, developing countries which has low income. So the law of diminishing returns. This works when investment increases, the productivity of capital will diminish and the capital to output ratio will rise.
Good day, madam and everyone. My name is Leon Fuseng, metric number 272148. Here I will continue to present about the structural change model. The Lewis two-sector model is a theoretical model of Sir William Adolph Lewis' structure change theory about the transform the traditional agriculture economy to modern industrial. Next, structural transformation is about the transition of an economy from a low productivity to skill-intensive activity. Lewis' two-sector model is transform the surplus labor traditional agriculture to the industrial sector. Surplus labor is the excess surplus of labor above the quantity demanded. The Lewis model for underdeveloped economy consists of two sectors, which is traditional agriculture and modern industrial sector. For agriculture sector, it has zero marginal labor productivity and surplus labor can be withdrawn. And the labor will transfer to the industrial sector. The labor transfer will bring the output expansion, and it will stimulate investment and capital formation. Capitalists will reinvest all the profit. Graph 1 and Graph 2 will represent agriculture sector, while Graph 3 and Graph 4 represent industrial sector. Graph 1 is about the total agriculture production. The total product TPA of the food determined by the change of input of labor LA by given fixed quantity of capital KA and unchanged technology TA. Graph 2 shows that the average and marginal product of labor APLA and MPLA. Lewis have made two assumptions for agriculture sector. First, there is surplus of labor and the MPLA is zero. Second, rural workers share equally in the output, so that the rural real wages is determined by the average, not the marginal product of labor. So, labor in the agriculture sector, LA will producing TPA food and share equally as WA food per person. The formula that we can use is TPA divided by LA to get the WA. The marginal product for this LA worker is zero. Graph 4 is about the total product curve in the modern industrial sector. TPM is a function of the quantity of labor they employ to produce an output TPM1 with a capital KM1. Is expressed in thousands of urban worker L1. In this Lewis model, the agriculture sector capital stock is allowed to increase from KM1 to KM2 and the KM3. It because they reinvest the profit taken by the industrial. When the capital stock increase, it will shift the total product curve upward from TPM KM1 to TPM KM2 and TPM KM3. We move to Graph 3. Under the assumption of perfectly competitive labor market in industrial sector, the marginal product of labor curve are in fact the actual demand curve of labor. WM represents the real wages for industrial sector. At these wages, the surplus of rural labor assumed to be unlimited or perfect elastic, shown as the line of WM as L. The wages in industrial sector WM is higher than agriculture sector WA. So, employer in the industrial sector can hire as many surplus rural workers as they want. By giving a fixed capital KM1 in the initial point in the industrial sector, the demand curve of labor is determined by labor declining marginal product, and it is a negative slope curve of D1 KM1 equal to MPLM. In order to achieve profit maximizing in industrial sector, employers should hire L1 worker that D1 intersect with SL at the point of F. Total industrial sector output TPM1, they will give the area of 0D1 FL1. The output paid to the worker is the area of rectangle 0WM FL1, while the balance area of WM DLF is the total profit that we gain. Lewis assumed that all these profits are reinvested, so the total capital stock will increase from KM1 to KM2. It will shift the total product curve to TPM KM1 to TPM KM2. The labor demand curve will shift outward to D2 KM2. New equilibrium at point G if L2 worker employed. This process will continue the same for TPM3. This process of industrial sector self-sustaining growth and employment expansion is assumed to be continued until all surplus of rural labor is observed to new industrial sector. That's all from me. Thank you. Now I will pass to next presenter.
My name is Muhammad Abah Nobi Fazal Anwar. My metric number is 26070 and my part today is criticism of the Lewis model. And as you can see before this, my group mate has been telling you guys about Lewis, and it has got 4 assumptions that do not fit the economic realities. The first one is the rate of labor transfer and employment creation in the modern sector is proportional to the rate of modern sector capital accumulation. And the number two is surplus labor exists in rural areas while there is full employment in the urban areas. Most contemporary research indicates that there is a little surplus labor in rural locations. And the number three is the notion of competitive modern sector labor market that guarantees the continued existence of constant real urban wages up to the point where the supply of rural surplus labor is exhausted. Number four is assumption of diminishing returns in the modern industrial sector. So, yet there is no much evidence that increasing returns prevail in that sector, posing special problems for development policymaking that we will see in chapter 4. And the next one is this figure shows the Lewis model modified by labor saving capital accumulation employment application. As you can see over here, capitalist profits are invested in more sophisticated labor saving capital equipment. The figure shows that the labor demand curve do not shift uniformly upward, but in fact cross. Demand curve in D2 KM2 has a greater negative slope than D1 KM1 to reflect the fact that the additions to the capital stock embody labor saving technical progress. That is, KM2 requires much less labor per unit of output than KM1 technology does. The second one is structural change and patterns of development. Same thing like before, the pattern of development analysis of structural changes focus on the sequential or consecutive process through which the economic, industrial, and institutional structure of an underdeveloped economy transform over time to permit new industries to replace traditional agriculture as the engine of economic growth. And meanwhile, unlike Lewis' model, savings and investment are necessary but not sufficient conditions for economic growth. Apart from capital accumulation, both physical and human, a set of interrelated changes in the economy structure of a country are required for the transition from traditional economic system to modern one. These structural changes involve virtually all economic functions. And the structure continued by that empirical structural change analysis emphasize both on domestic and international constraint on development. The domestic changes include economic constraints such as country resource endowment. Apart from that, its physical and population size, as well as institutional constraints such as government policies and objectives. And while the international constraint on development includes access to external capital, technology, and international trade. After all, the international constraints that make the transition of currently developing countries differ from that of now industrial countries. Thank you.